Hope everyone sees. Okay, great. So quick little introduction. My name is Rami Sarabi. I'm an architectural designer and interior designer here in Newport Beach. But I actually got to work. So I did an internship at the firm that is in charge of redoing the Montparnasse Tower. So I was in Paris for 6 months working on the project. So that's why I chose this subject for you guys. So hopefully I can give you some more insight as to what's going on with the renovation, and hopefully it should be, well, we should start construction soon. It was supposed to start in 2019 and be ready for the Olympic Games in 2024. With COVID, that kind of changed the schedule, but hopefully it should be starting soon. Okay, so some basic information on the tower. So it's located at 33 Avenue du Maine in the 15th arrondissement of Paris. It has 59 floors, 6 of which are underground. It stands at about 690 feet tall. So it was actually, when it was built, the tallest tower in France. And recently in 2011, that was actually taken over by the Tour First in La Défense. So it's no longer the tallest tower in France, but it is still the tallest tower and the tallest building within Paris proper. So right now it houses about 1,300,000 square feet of strictly office space. There's nothing else going on inside the tower other than a really small restaurant that's not great on the top. But other than that, just mainly offices, and there's some pretty big companies in there. We have like Accor, AXA, which is one of the largest insurance companies in France. And we also have foreign companies like Al Jazeera News is headquartered there for their French station. So quite a big array of companies. So it was built in 1969, or started construction in 1969, finished in 73. And it was built by a group of architects, Eugène Baudouin, Urbain Cassin, Louis William de Marien, and they represented what they called the AOM, or the Agence pour l'Opération Mine Montparnasse. So they kind of developed and designed the tower. And right now it is owned by a company called L'Ensemble Immobilier Tourmaine Montparnasse, or EITMM, but they're changing their name now that they're redoing the tower to Demain Montparnasse. And so that's like a co-op that has about 480 owners for the tower, but there's actually one guy who owns like 60% of the tower. His name is Frédéric Lemos. He's a super famous developer and CEO in France, so he owns the majority of the tower. So the location of the tower, it's in the left bank of Paris. So as you guys know, Paris is split into two. There's the northern right bank and the southern left bank, split by the Seine River. So the location is kind of interesting with the tower. So the tower itself is technically in the 5th arrondissement, but as I said earlier, the address is in the 15th. It's because it actually is so big that it's in like 4 different arrondissements at once. So it's in the 6th as well, the 14th, the 15th, and it's like a small walking distance away from the 7th. So it's actually really central in regards to Paris. The location used to be a really rural kind of bohemian area. It was named after Montparnasse, which was a hill that used to be there. And it was really artistic and kind of a cultural hub in the beginning. And it also became a central transportation hub for Paris because of its location. So you have the Gare de Montparnasse, which is one of the largest train stations in Paris, as well as the Montparnasse Bienvenue metro stop, which is one of Paris's busiest and largest as well. And adjacent to the tower, there's the Cimetière de Montparnasse, which is one of Paris's most famous cemeteries. So a little early history on the tower. Like I said, it was the former site of Montparnasse, which was this large grassy hill, and it was actually really popular with students at the time. So people would come study and kind of relax there. And then it was actually flattened in 1725 to make room for Paris's urban sprawl. So a little quick history on Paris. The way that it was developed as a city, it started on Ile de la Cité, which is in the 1st, and it kind of grew from there in concentric circles. So during the 18th century, Montparnasse was actually still outside of Paris proper. So what that meant was there was no tax on alcohol in Montparnasse like there was within Paris. So a lot of cabarets and theaters ended up opening up in the area. And then when the 19th century came in, this switched to more cafes that were really popular with artists. You have some that are actually still there today, like La Rotonde and La Coupole. And then in 1852, the Gare Montparnasse was built. So that added the train station to the area. And then in the 20th century, you ended up getting a lot of foreigners who came to the area, mainly Americans, as well as Russians and Germans. And that kind of changed the dynamic of the location. So it ended up becoming more kind of a business area and, dare I say, capitalistic area, which isn't the best thing to say in France, but it was this kind of new shift in thinking in Montparnasse. So in regards to modern history, in 1934, the SNCF was formed, and they're kind of the group that runs all of the trainways in France. And they decided to move the train station just a little south because it was too small for the popularity of the new train railways in France. So this ended up freeing up a large plot of land. And so in 1959, the project was conceived by the Ensemble Immobilier Tourmé Montparnasse. And in 1969, President Georges Pompidou at the time approved the project for not only a tower, but also an adjacent shopping center next door. So construction started then, ended in 73, and then on the 18th of June, they inaugurated the building. But it was immediately met with a lot of hatred. People detested the building. They said it was quite ugly, way too large in scale for Paris, way too opaque. And so the following year, actually, the city of Paris banned the construction of anything above 7 stories within Paris proper to keep everything within the scale that Paris exists at now. And they actually just recently removed that law, and now you can build up to 600 feet in Paris. But before that, out of hatred for the Tour Montparnasse, you could not build anything above 7 stories. So with the competition, so in order to kind of bring the tower into the 21st century and kind of change Parisians' perspective on it, in June 2016, the EITMM launched a competition to redesign the tower. And they were going to showcase the tower, the new tower, hopefully for the 2024 Olympic Games. So they had a total of 700 submissions, and they picked 7 finalists. And you had really big names in there, like what we call starchitects in the architectural community. So MAD out of China, OMA, which is Rem Koolhaas's firm in New York. And you have Dominique Perrault from Paris, who built the National Library, or the Bibliothèque Nationale, which is really famous in Paris. And so the actual final 2 finalists were quite unknown. You have Studio Gang from the US and La Nouvelle OM from Paris. And so La Nouvelle OM was chosen in June 2017 because their design was created the most difference in the tower without actually changing the structure as much. So it wasn't as expensive of a project, but you still got a really solid result. And so at the end of the competition, all of the finalists' work was on display at the Pavillon de l'Arsenal, which is Paris's main architecture museum. So some information on La Nouvelle OM. So they were actually born through the competition. They didn't exist before. So what it was is a consortium of 3 pre-existing firms that joined together. So you have Ardel Le Bihan, which comprised of Cyril Le Bihan and Mathurin Ardel. And so they were really famous for doing hospitality architecture. You have Chartier d'Alix with Pascal Dalix and Frédéric Chartier. And they did public service in schools. And then finally you had Franklin Azy, and he was known for doing commercial offices. So the 3 firms kind of got together and brought all their specialties to create a tower that was not only just offices, but now this new mixed-use tower. So the mixed-use tower, the architects went into the project wanting to create a space that felt that it was not only like a part of the urban fabric of Paris, but it was also a great addition to it. So immediately they wanted to create something transparent that just felt like it was a natural continuation of the city, a place where the public could come hang out. That was offices, even hotel space, garden areas, public spaces. you name it. So they wanted to kind of completely change the way that Paris interacts with the tower. So instead of this thing that just sticks out like an ugly sore thumb, it's a kind of living, breathing part of the city. And so, yeah, so continuing from that, so with the old tower, or the current tower right now, it's famous for its facade, which is this really intense copper tinted window glass that was popular in the 60s and 70s called le verre noir. And as you can see in this picture here, if you see my mouse, the facade is really dictated by the structure. Like you can read immediately where all the columns are, where all the mullions are, where all the mechanical areas are, and it's just super opaque. So immediately the focus of the project was to kind of remove that. But since there is like 430,000 square feet of facade on this building, you have so much of this verre noir or black glass that they didn't want to just get rid of and throw away. So in order to kind of keep the building and the construction more sustainable, they decided that they're going to actually wrap the structural core of the building in the verre noir, as you can kind of see over here. And also they're going to create custom light fixtures and furniture with the verre noir as well. So as you go into the new facade, so the firm, like I said, was chosen because they were able to keep the main structural integrity of the building. So the columns are remaining the same, which in French we call les poteaux, and the mullions are remaining the same, which are the kind of thin columns that go between the glass, which we call les meneaux in French. But what they're doing is they're creating a fully operational glass curtain wall. And they're creating these spaces called jardins d'hiver or winter gardens. So you have this alternating kind of window pop out that goes in and out throughout the building, which you can plant on the inside. And then with the greenhouse effect, you can actually plant things during the winter, even when it's snowy and harsh outside. And then the alternating kind of texture of the jardin d'hiver creates sunshade for the floors below. And also you have a louver system embedded within it. And so that also helps with sunshade. So it's going to be fully automated, fully glass, fully transparent, and I think just a much improved, much more beautiful solution to the current tower. So the way that it's set up, the lobby is quite interesting. It's about 4 stories high, and it goes from underground and above ground. So underground, there's a really beautiful garden that kind of has these pop-outs that continue up above ground, and you have these bridges that lead you in. And once you're inside, there's no columns in this space. It's completely open. It's structurally held up by the core. So you just have this really beautiful, light, bright, airy space. And that gives you access into the parking, direct access into the mall, which is underground mostly. And also it gives security to the security access to the floors above. The Sky Gardens, so the first chunk of offices in the building all have their own private gardens surrounding them. And then once you hit the 14th floor, there's actually a public garden, which they're calling a Sky Garden or a Jardin Suspendu. That's going to be available for anyone who wants to come hang out. It'll be kind of more like a public park with some flex, like co-working space and office space. So any startups or people who can't afford to have their own offices can come use that space to work. And then the rooftop of the building is kind of split up into 3. So on the lowest floor of the rooftop, you have a brand new restaurant, which is going to be absolutely beautiful with 360-degree views. Because right now the restaurant that they have, it's really small, it's kind of blocked off, and it's horrible food. So hopefully they're going to get a new chef and kind of just recreate, breathe new life into the restaurant. Above that, you're going to have a champagne bar because a lot of people come to the tower for special occasions. And on the top floor, you have this actually huge conservatory that's kind of the crown or the central focus point of the tower. So that conservatory, which we call la serre in French, it's going to be separated a little bit from the building, so there's a gap underneath it, and that kind of helps with the break up the verticality of the tower. It's going to have angled beams or poutres in French that are going to hold solar panels to help with energy renewal, and there's going to be a wide range of plants within. So you're going to have large trees to help with oxygen creation, and you're also going to have edible and like agricultural plants that showcase the French terroir and can be used actually to help feed the homeless in France. So there's also going to be on the sides louvered glass to help gain wind energy. So they're going to renew some wind energy as well and help fight wind shear. And so overall, the serre is kind of like the highlight of the green aspect of the building. So in general, sustainability, the construction is going to be sustainable too. So they're not going to force everybody out of the building and redo it. They're going to do it stage by stage and section by section. So they rented out office space somewhere else in Paris. So every few floors are going to use that specific office space and move back when their floor is done, which helps save a lot of money. And then the actually entire budget of 300 million for the project is funded by the co-op itself. So none of it is paid for by the state. It's all privately funded, mostly by Monsieur Lumos. There's also going to be, so there was an asbestos problem within the tower, and they were able to remove most of it pre-construction, but once they remove those allèges, or the kind of window sills that are blocking the facade right now, they house a lot of the asbestos. So once they're removed, that'll completely take out the asbestos from the building. Like I said, there's going to be solar panels on the top floor and dry coolers. And so it's going to be a really green focused tower. Okay, and so now if anyone has any questions, also feel free to ask me questions about working in France. It doesn't have to be about the design of the tower. If you have any general questions, that's fine. I have to figure out how to unmute everybody. So let's see. Okay, hope I'm doing it.
I just did.
Okay.
J'ai une question. Est-ce qu'il y a une date pour finir le projet?
Oui, donc pour l'instant, ça doit être pour juin 2024, mais avec le Covid, ça a changé. Donc on espère de garder la même date, mais on verra exactement quand ça va être, juste avec maintenant l'arrêt de construction en France.
Mais comme tu as dit, il y a quelques parts qui sont déjà ouvertes, comme les restaurants et tout ça? Ou...
Oui, donc tout ce qui est dans la tour actuellement est toujours ouvert. Donc le restaurant va changer aussi, donc ils vont refaire tout après. Mais pour l'instant, vous pouvez entrer la tour et tout ça. Donc tout est ouvert, c'est juste maintenant, je pense qu'ils ont commencé avec les premiers 3 ou 4 étages.
Très intéressant.
Oui. Any other questions?
Est-ce qu'il y a un hôtel dedans?
Oui, donc pour l'instant, maintenant, il n'y en a pas, mais ils vont ajouter un hôtel de 50 chambres qui va être 3 étages de la nouvelle tour. Et ça va être utilisé aussi pour les Jeux olympiques, pour héberger les athlètes qui vont jouer dans les Jeux.
Will they have very many entertainment centers there, like movies or whatever?
So yeah, they want to do screenings. So on that kind of the Sky Garden on the 14th floor, they're going to have a movie room as well. And on the top floor in the conservatory, they're going to have an event space. So there's going to be kind of like an amphitheater area where they can do performances and small concerts and things like that. So they're going to try to add as much entertainment space as possible. Yeah.
C'est à peu près comme le centre Pompidou, quoi?
Un petit peu, dans le sens que c'est plus utilisable pour toute la public et pour tous un habitant de Paris. Et aussi, la structure est tellement... on peut lire la structure de la tour immédiatement. Donc, ça ressemble un petit peu au centre Pompidou, mais c'est complètement dans une autre échelle.
Oui, oui, oui. Je ne suis pas allée à Paris depuis 20 ans, c'est pour ça que je me souviens d'autres.
Oui, exactement.
Oui, de la part culturelle comme ça,
Oui.
et un building très intéressant aussi. Hein.
C'est vrai, exactement.
C'est ça. Les Parisiens, toujours avec des idées innovatrices. Hein.
Oui, exactement. Des tests en général, comme la pyramide du Louvre aussi.
Ouais, voilà.
Mais avec le temps, ça change. Donc, j'espère que cette fois-ci, ils vont adorer la nouvelle tour, mais on verra. Ça dépend. On doit attendre pour le futur.
Yeah. Well, merci de nous faire la présentation.
Merci à
C'était
vous.
très
Merci
intéressant.
beaucoup.
Oui.
Merci. Est-ce qu'il y a des autres questions? Any other questions?
I have a question, actually. I would like to know, as an architect, as a student, because you already study in the US and you went to a prestigious university to study architecture. So having a training there, and I'm sure you already had a training in the US, can you give us, just emphasize the difference that you noticed?
Yeah, definitely. So I think what's interesting is training there versus training here. Here it was really specific. So I went to USC, and so what we learned was actually very much based on Los Angeles's architectural history and how to kind of combat the urban problems of LA. And we didn't really go much beyond that. So I think in France, it's a lot different, because Europe, the way it is, it's so close to the rest of the world that they actually use a lot of historical precedents that we don't really have exposure to. And so I think it's generally a lot more broad of a horizon architecturally than it is here. So I learned a lot in the 6 months that I was there, and it really kind of opened my eyes to a lot more that I didn't really get to learn about here. So it was really helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Did you happen to do any changes because of the pandemic in the ventilation with this big structure?
Yeah, so my time with the building ended before the pandemic, so I came here just before everything started. But they did have to, there is like a new set of regulations that the city is asking all new buildings to have. So they did have to kind of go through and recreate different ventilation and different series of HVAC throughout the building. So yeah, that was taken into account as well.
But the building is not 100% independent as of energy, right? It's sustainable, so it has some of it, but it's not 100%.
No, exactly. It's not self-sufficient in terms of energy, but it does
incorporate.
Yeah. So it does have a large amount that is self-sufficient, but it's not completely by any means.
Oh, one other question. I would imagine that the night view of this building must be pretty impressive. Do you have a representation of that you can show us?
Yes, let me see if I can pull up a picture. So there was that one kind of photo with the rooftop, but I can actually pull up a photo for you guys of the night view. If it comes up here, sometimes it likes to hide. Yeah,
You need to share your screen.
Yeah, let me do this. So it's not the best rendering in the world, but let me do this. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see my screen. So this is the only one that we have kind of on file. So yeah, it doesn't do the best of showing really the transparency and the light that's going to be from the building, but they do kind of have, so up here you have the restaurants and the conservatory, and this would be the hotel floors up here.
And you always have that moon up above, right?
Yes, of course. That stays
Perfectly
part of the
placed.
tower. Exactly.
Architecturally.
Just like
Of the
Paris.
roof, yep. Part of the core structure of the building.
It just sits there all day and all night.
Exactly.
I did a Google of this and the reconstruction of, and I don't think I can bring it back, but I found a website by the company that's doing this, and they have it's about a 3-minute long video.
Yes.
3-dimensional video.
Yes.
It's very, very realistic. And they took you from the morning until late at night.
Time
They
lapse.
covered the entire tower.
Yeah, let me
That's
see.
cool.
Actually, I should be able to pull that up. So.
It was silent though.
Yeah, I don't think, because it's all done through this kind of 3D rendering software. So, but they just recently redid their website. Let's see, it should be the movie here.
Yes, I believe that's it.
Perfect.
Right. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about it as we go through this.
Yeah, so this here would be that conservatory on top. So like I said, there's going to be some event space. So this is the lobby. So this is the underground part here that connects to the mall, and then here's the above ground area. So like I said, it's just this really open space here with no columns, and you just have this like really beautiful view out to Paris around you. And again, it's about 4 stories worth of lobby space, and you have these digital screens kind of embedded on the glass. So these LEDs that kind of make this beautiful projecting image. And so as you move up, you have the lobbies, the offices here that are all planted, and there's that sky garden I was talking about with the co-working space inside. And so then you'd have a view. So this is the 14th floor. So you'd have from here already a really beautiful view of the Eiffel Tower and over much of
And
Paris. Since Paris is strictly at 7 stories. So yeah, here's like an example of the co-working space. And here you can also see the facade and the way that it kind of undulates in and out, which I think adds this really beautiful texture to the tower, and just like a different layer to it. Here's a hotel room. So the hotel is actually going to be a mix between luxury and also hostel, because there are a lot of students who come. So they're going to try to make it like a chic hostel meets 5-star hotel. It's a really interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah, that was actually my thing. So because I came from LA, so they asked me to bring different precedents from Los Angeles. This is the Champagne Bar. This is the observatory around the Champagne Bar. And so yeah, there's the rooftop section, and you can see the conservatory up top, the restaurant down below, and the Champagne Bar in the center. And so that's moving up into the conservatory. And so on the wall is going to be more of the agriculture, and on the outside is going to be more of those larger plants.
That's a lot of agriculture.
Yeah. It is
Making a lot of air.
So yeah, there's the 2024 Olympic Games logo that was on the tower. So they're really hoping to try to get it done before then, but we'll see.
So I have a structural engineering question.
Okay, I'll do my best with it. It's not my forte.
It's a very basic one. You would know one way or the other. So you mentioned before that the first 4 floors are really, they can be so open because they're all supported by the center core.
Yeah.
So it's the center core, and basically all the floors are cantilevered off?
Yes, but then so the columns that are there are embedded within the facade. So there's structural columns and like mullions on the facade, and then so everything basically is open from the core to the facade. But then everything kind of goes back down, like the weight goes back down on the facadal columns, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course.
It must be very exciting to work on a project like
Yes,
that.
it was. I wish I could have stayed for longer, but unfortunately, Americans who haven't studied in France can only get an internship, which is 6 months strictly. So I really wanted to stay longer with the project, but unfortunately I had to come back. But I'm hoping to get my master's in France so I can continue working there because it was really such a great experience.
Bonne chance.
Merci beaucoup. Merci.
Pack me in your suitcase when you go, please.
Gladly.
You'll never know that I'm there.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they open the borders soon, depending on COVID, but fingers crossed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm hoping.
Hopefully we can go back soon.
Merci beaucoup pour
Merci à vous.
ce programme.
Yeah.
Thank you guys very much. I hope you enjoyed and hope you learned a little bit on.
Oui,
Yes.
c'est très bon.
Merci.
Merci.
Je viens présenter. Merci beaucoup.
Merci à vous.
Merci, Rami.
Okay.
Merci.
Bonne soirée.